Welcome to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast. And you're very welcome back to the Hawkeye Sidekick Hurling podcast with your host Mark Kennedy, joined again this week by Ruairi Walsh. And well, I'm delighted to welcome James Mulcare back to the show. How are things, James and Rory?
Very good, Mark.
Very good. I suppose we'll preview the Munster Senior Hurling Championship final between Limerick and Clare. We'll also look at the Senior Hurling Championship decider in Leinster between Kilkenny and Galway. Have a look at the Ireland Minor qualifier series at the moment between Galway, Clare and Laois, and also a bit of a preview on the Antrim Kerry game in Croke Park. I suppose, guys, we can start off with the Munster Senior Hurling Championship final this Sunday in FBD Semple Stadium in Thurles. Rory, as a proud Clareman, the hype machine probably has gone in overdrive a bit like Limerick this week from all reports. I suppose you're eagerly looking forward to this fixture from the last few weeks.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't know if I look forward to a match in so long because it's all set to be, well, it seems to have built up so far in the Munster Championship to be the defining game. Clare and Limerick have performed well. Limerick started off, as we know, against Cork at 100 miles an hour in their first game. Didn't hit those heights again in the other three games, but still their experience in finals and in winning finals of late, and Munster finals, Ireland finals, like that has to stand to them. Clare are unproven. This present bunch anyway are unproven in finals. They just haven't been there to win them really. So, but they seem to have momentum with them. So it's kind of, they have a free shot at Limerick. They're still in the championship. And as a fact, Clare haven't won Munster final since 1998. Like, there's huge motivation for them. You'd have to say that it would mean more to Clare at this stage than Limerick. Just that gap, like Limerick are probably, looking at the larger prize, whereas Clare are probably just looking at Sunday. Now, saying that, like, Limerick under no circumstances are going to want to lose a Munster final to Clare, but I suppose the way Clare have kind of been starved of success since 2013, especially with all the promise that crop showed. And apart from one National League is all they picked up with this bunch of players since. So you are hoping that, that Sunday we might get a bit of silverware. But as we said, it's going to be a massive mountain to climb overcoming this Limerick side. But yeah, the excitement is building. From Clare, teaching in school in Limerick, so the Slagans and I'm just actually, in a way, we're Monday bank holiday and Tuesday we're off as well with the bank holiday. And in one way, if we don't win, and after all my talk this week, I'll be kind of glad. But another way, if we do win, I'd nearly be arriving at school Monday just in case anyone shows up,
Oh well, sure. Look, it's a nice rivalry between Limerick and Clare, always done through the years. So many close ties. So yeah, we'll see what Wednesday brings for you, Rory. James, we'll bring you in. I suppose the neutral here, seeing as I'm from Limerick. What are the main areas that you're looking forward to seeing, James, in this Munster Hurling final? What matchups is really appealing to you?
Well, I suppose like Clare at the minute is just they've been building nicely throughout the year, kind of slowly but steadily through the league, and then did a very good, obviously, round robin in Munster. And to draw the last day sets this up nicely because no team has lost any momentum. They're both carrying that momentum through with them. And I think, like, obviously the two things that stand out for me with Clare is that they've two forwards up there at the moment that are arguably the two best forwards with Gillane, I suppose, in O'Donnell and Kelly. And it's just going to be fascinating to see what Limerick do in terms of marking both O'Donnell and Kelly. Like, do they look at man marking Kelly? Does Kiley think that he'll say to Burns to go on Kelly and follow him? If he does do that, then you're kind of looking at Limerick might lose a bit then with Burns in terms of what he offers you offensively. He's been knocking over a lot of points and driving Limerick forward at times. So if you detail him to take Kelly out of it, you do lose a bit of that. And similarly with O'Donnell, like, does Lohan, does he start him on the left side with a view, coming straight on Burns, and does he drift then and move around? And again, do they follow or what do they do? Like, there's a few matchups there that look very interesting. And then the other one for me then is with Gillane is obviously like the form he's in at the minute. But he's up against, like, you're looking there at Clare and the backline, the full backline there, that Hayes is arguably up there with Finn in terms of if you were naming your all-star cornerbacks at the minute, you'd be naming him. So that's set up as well, I think, for me to be a really fascinating battle as well. And, I think Lynch is going to be, obviously, I think Lynch is a monumental loss for Limerick, and they are coping. They have a few injuries and they are coping with them, but it's set up perfectly for Sunday. You're just hoping that Clare can turn up and that they perform. If they do perform, then I think we're in for a cracker, and it could be like go down to the wire.
Absolutely. Probably we'll get you back in here. I suppose the Clare performance against Limerick this year have been very encouraging. I suppose I'd go back to that Alliance Hurling League fixture in Cusack Park in Ennis, where Limerick kind of showed pretty much a full hand in that match. And Clare, I thought to a man, were superb. Continued that in this championship round game in Cusack Park in Ennis. And I suppose you definitely nullified middle third for good long stretches. I suppose from your perspective, Ruairi, who are the key Clare players again that need to deliver on Sunday?
Yeah, and James touched on a few potential matchups there, and I'd agree with him as well. Aaron Gillane is going to be a huge, he wasn't playing the last 10 minutes. He's going to be a huge plus for Limerick, and it'll cause a headache for the Clare full back line. I wonder, is Conor Cleary a bit more suited to him in terms of the aerial ability of Gillane? That could be a problem if Hayes marks him. You'd imagine, like low ball, Hayes would have serious pace and would match Gillane and try and get out in front of him, but on that high ball threat, as we saw against Tipperary, that's maybe something that Conor Cleary might, if Gillane gets out in front of him and shoots one of his outrageous scores over his shoulder, you might say fair enough. But once he doesn't get in for goals, I think maybe Lohan might be thinking that way. And the bigger threat for a goal threat would be Gillane on the high ball. So I'd nearly see Cleary matching up on Gillane, and then Rory Hayes picking up maybe whoever else goes inside in the two-man full forward line. And then at the other ends as well, it's intriguing what will Kiley do with Tony Kelly, because the last two times in 2020, they didn't have a man marker on Tony Kelly, and in the last round in Ennis there, in the round robin, they didn't have a man marker on Tony Kelly. And you'd have to say, the damage Kelly did in those two games, I just think that, I know Limerick are saying this is the way we set up and we're going to play our system, but I just think with Tony Kelly, you have to try and limit the damage, and that has to be, I think, a man marker, because he floats around into pockets of space, and just having him passing him off between defenders, I don't think it works. And I know he'll still, having a man marker on him, he will still cause trouble, but at least then that there's somebody always keeping an eye on him wherever he pops up. Maybe Barry Nash might be that guy, because Barry Nash would have the pace to match him. Plus, when Limerick have possession, Nash will be then a threat for Kelly, as in Kelly will have to keep an eye on where Nash is, because as we know, he can drive forward, link play, and take scores at the other end. So, yeah, that's a very interesting one. What will Limerick change their tactics this time around? I think they should, to be honest, because Kelly has caused them so much damage in the last couple of games, and he has to have been mentioned in their, post-match conversations from Ennis and coming up to this game as well. Because he is a major threat, and if the game is tight, he is a match winner for Clare, without a doubt. The one thing I would say, Mark, coming back to the Ennis game, was I thought Clare fronted up very well physically with Limerick that day, and a lot of teams have been kind of blown away by the physicality of Limerick and intensity of it. But I did think Clare having a good bit of improvement from that game, and that Cathal Malone and Shane O'Donnell that day in particular, and Peter Duggan had quiet games compared to their other three games in Munster so far. They've been brilliant in the other three games, and I thought they kind of were a bit below themselves that day. So you're hoping for an improvement. Even if two of those guys bring a bigger performance the next day, it's going to cause a bigger threat at the other end for Limerick. So that's where I kind of see Clare's improvements coming from. Because apart from Kelly from play and David Fitzgerald as well that day up in Ennis, the rest of the Clare forwards didn't really contribute like they should have. And we saw against Waterford when Kelly wasn't playing that there is massive scoring potential there. So no, that's as well because Limerick have a very settled backline that effectively shut them down in Ennis that day as well. But you'd have to imagine that Clare would be thinking okay, here's another massive area that we can get improvement in from the round robin game.
Sure, I think it's quite intriguing. Yeah, James.
Do you think Kiley might look at maybe bringing Will O'Donoghue back to kind of keep tabs on Kelly? I mean, he's good for for kind of breaking up play and stuff, and that might be an option that Kiley might look at as well.
Yeah, the only thing I suppose, Lohan, when Caleb Lyons did that job last year for Waterford, Lohan put Kelly as an out-and-out corner forward. So, you wouldn't see Will O'Donoghue playing corner back. Like, so you can put, that's an option with Kelly. You can just put him anywhere. So depending on who goes to mark him, like, Clare might try and exploit that as well by putting them in an uncomfortable position. But so, yeah, it is hard to know. Maybe Limerick will say, well, despite that, we haven't been beaten by Clare doing this. So, we won't change the way we play. We won't change our system for anyone.
He was unbelievable the last day. Like, I mean, there's, there's I'm thinking of Joe Canning against Cork and was it 09? But like, there's a few performances that you would, you pick out of players that are, in peak form at the top of their ability, and that's one of the performances for the ages. I thought the last day it was just kind of mind blowing, really, the way he performed it. So like, I think Limerick surely, like, he's surely going to be top of the agenda in terms of what Kiley and Kinnerk have been discussed. I can't see them, not tasking anyone to go back on him. Surely, like you said it there, Rory. Like, just if the game is tight, you don't have it. Like, he's a match winner there, so I'd be surprised if the lads don't have a plan for him.
I think it's intriguingly poised there for Limerick because historically the wing forwards will come back deep. I suppose Dara Donovan and also Will O'Donoghue doing an amount of work potentially for defensively to really protect a Hannon in a half-back line. It's been very zonal defensive structures there for Kinnerk particularly. I'm not sure if that could fundamentally change. But again, like Tony Kelly, that opening period in Cusack Park was unmarkable. He was just in a different stratosphere altogether. So I think you have to give plaudits to Kelly in terms of his movement and the ability to shoot from long range. So I think that'll be intriguing for Limerick. As I said, the other intriguing battle there will be the number 11 jersey, particularly. Who's going to fill that? Because definitely Kyle Hayes seems a little bit inhibited in that full forward line. Granted, he scores an early goal, but his influence was fairly minimal. Granted, Cian Lynch, as you said, James, on the outset of this podcast, is probably a monumental loss for Limerick. And if he is going to continue to be absent, it may cost Limerick down the road. But I suppose from a Limerick perspective, centre forward wise here, Rory, who we thinking going to be lining up here for Limerick initially? I know there may be a little bit of rotation involved, but who are probably the contenders you're thinking might be on John Conlon from the start?
Yeah, I think Cathal O'Neill is a real contender, strong in the air, and he will kind of cause problems for Conlon because he can drop back deep and he can score from range as well. So he's the kind of guy that when he drops back into midfield, that Clare would have to be mindful of him. And, John Conlon likes to sit now. He's looking a bit like Hannon, very similar in their roles, like looks for protection from his midfielders and then bombs forward to join the attack at times as well. So they're very kind of similar style centre-backs. Obviously, they were both previously, like Hannon played forwards before, as we know. They're both forwards who've come back into the backs. And you can kind of see that at times. They hold and sit, but at times to get forward, they do join the attack. So I think Cathal O'Neill then will cause problems because he will pop up along the line, a bit like Cian Lynch would do compared to a more traditional 11, So that's what I might say would be the direct replacement for Cian Lynch. And then you're not really upsetting the rest of the team by moving numerous players about. It's a straight out change there. So yeah, look, that's a factor. And often in these games as well, it's somebody that we probably won't mention today that'll pop up and we'll all be talking about next week. And maybe Cathal O'Neill from Limerick point of view could be that guy. Or for Clare, Shane Meehan, who I've been harping on about a good bit in the podcast. Maybe Lohan will throw him in from the start as a bit of a kind of an unknown quantity, something that Limerick wouldn't really have maybe talked to movement about or planned for. Or again, the bench now seems to be strengthening for both teams. As we heard, Mark Rogers and Aidan McCarthy have been back training with Clare. Are they going to make the bench? Who knows? It's we'll find out when team selection comes out. And for Limerick, Peter Casey has been back training as well, and these guys could be huge factors coming in off the bench. So if it's a really tight game, as we alluded to, and what looks like a warm day in Thurles, hopefully if that weather forecast comes true, the bench is going to be vital here as well.
Yeah, it's going to be huge.
Where do we see Kyle Hayes? Do you think Limerick will stick with Kyle Hayes there, or do you see them bringing him back? Because he's a fella that seems to offer more really when he's marauding forward. So you make the argument for bringing him back towards the half back line, but then like, who do you take? You're looking there at the minute. Who do you shift out of there? So I mean, like, is it a case that do we see that? Do we think Kylie will stay? Will leave him there in the full forward line, or what? What do you reckon?
Yeah, it depends on how he's gone in training since. We have to remember he looked to be, going quite well full forward against Cork. Now that could have been the Cork full backline or a bit at sea that day anyway. So, but also it depends how he's gone in training since. I know he got the goal in Ennis, but it was Conor Boylan had kind of done the hard work for him and popped it off to him. Wasn't quite himself in Ennis that day, but he was coming back from injury. Has he come on in the meantime? Like, we're talking 3 or 4 weeks since that match. And again, I suppose the option is, do they put him back into number 7? And then you're kind of looking at the full backline. The way they played in Ennis were quite strong. So would Dan lose out there? Hard to know again if Dan is flying and training in the meantime. Like, these are probably good options for Kylie, because whoever's losing out is probably an all-star player then you have in the bench. Like, so
Absolutely.
I'd say those ABV games have been absolutely savage in the Limerick camp there, as you say. But like with Kyle Hayes particularly, he's so versatile. He can play 6, midfield, 11, 14. He's played a few positions with Kildime, Palace Kenry as well in his club career as well. So, but I think a few weeks more training under his belt, I think along with Flanagan as well, there was a few guys there with maybe game time issues and game minutes. So could probably see Flanagan slotting in full forward. You could maybe see Kyle Hayes maybe in a more deeper role, maybe midfield, half forward, running from deep, particularly if you have the likes of Gearóid Hegarty here and Tom Morrissey, who may be on form as well. You can imagine that half forward line clicking. Good deep runs from those guys could really create a few attacking opportunities for Kyle Hayes. So it'll be fascinating watch here. I suppose, guys, get a few predictions from me in terms of Cusack Park. No, we've a Limerick man, Clare man here. The Cork man will have to probably be the cast and vote here, but I suppose Ruairi will come to you first anyway.
Like, this is an incredibly hard game to predict. As you said, Clare are kind of unknown in the Munster final against a team who have won 10 out of their last 11 championship games, have gone for 3 in a row All Irelands. Like, so like you're really, this is like, kind of going up against New Zealand in their pomp in a way. Like, can you take them down? So like the signs are, like, if Clare were ever to really go toe to toe with Limerick, this could be it. But as we said, we'll only find out on Sunday whether they can perform at this level. I just see, with the only thing I would say is a positive, like with Lohan over this team, they seem to have a real ferocity and work rate, and you're just hoping that of all things that will happen, like Clare won't give up the ghost or won't lie down, and they'll fight tooth and nail, and just whether they have the ability then to get over the line. Really hard one to predict. Like, are we going to say, like, there was a draw in the league, there was a draw in the round robin? Is it going to be that close that you're going to end up with a draw in extra time again? It's quite possible. I'm just hoping, actually, that they give a huge performance, and if they're a point or two the wrong side of it, and once they come through intact without any major injuries, like, they'll still have momentum going into the Ireland series, and they know that if they meet Limerick again later in the year, that they can go, that they're right up there at their level. So yeah, I'll kind of go with Clare by a point, maybe. Just getting over the line. Ball off the crossbar, Eamon Taft style. Peter Duggan flicking it to the net.
God, that'd be Phoenix for the Flames stuff if that happened now. Fairness, Rory. James, will get you in there. Probably is the neutral in here. Who are you fancying going up the steps and Turles?
I just really feel good atmosphere to Clare at the minute. I don't think they'll have any fear of Limerick. The only thing I'd be thinking is that maybe the last day in the drawn match, that I think Clare are probably more economical than Limerick. Limerick had some poor whites there in the last 10 or 15 minutes. So I would think, if looking at it from Kylie and Kinnerk, maybe they think Limerick might have a bit more improvement in them than Clare. As Rory was saying there, you're just hoping that Clare do turn up and put in a performance. And I just think Limerick, they turn up in finals. They're going for 3 in a row in the All Ireland. I think it would just be their 4th Munster in a row if they win. I think it'll be tight, but I'd be coming down on the side of Limerick. I think maybe the only thing that could be a wild card in this is discipline. Limerick obviously had a few red cards already, and that could be something that was fake. But I think I'd be leaning towards Limerick.
Yeah.
I'd be hoping it'd be tight though.
Yeah, I think it's going to be tight as well. I think it'd be high scoring. Now, John Kiely and Declan Hannon have been at pains to stress that they're expecting a better Clare performance. They're saying all the right things. Seems to be a bit of a focus within the Limerick camp, and I would say the same for Clare as well. I think both things are going to bring it. Now, whoever loses this final, I mean, it may be the morale may get a little bit jolted, a little bit going into an All-Ireland quarter final, but I think besides the point, it'll be fascinating to see the Limerick adjustments here, and I think Limerick's keyword will be performance. If they can perform to a high level, they will focus on their performance here. I think they've kind of seen some of the matchups from Cusack Park particularly, and I think homework may be done, but I still think Clare have massive say in this game, and I think Peter Duggan as well, particularly inside. I know he didn't have the best of days against Mike Casey in Cusack Park, but I think Thurles, just the fast surface that's there, I think Duggan could be well suited here to maybe a goal or two. I'd just go Limerick by a point, but I would not be all surprised here if we're going to 17 minutes and it's level pegging here. I think it's this rivalry seems to be kind of building momentum here as the weeks have gone on here since Cusack Park. I think there's been an awful lot of column inches written. I think we'll have a few more, and I don't think it could be the last time we'll see these two teams maybe face each other in an All-Ireland series. So I'm going to go Limerick by a point, but would not be all surprised here if there's another sting in the tail here.
The only thing about predicting sort of repeat matches later in the year is we talked probably the same about Waterford and Limerick. That's where that went. But I think the championship we need a good performance from Clare on Sunday. Like if Limerick were to go out and deliver a bit of a shellacking, you're just hoping that they don't. But if they do, that's leaving us in a very, obviously it's great for Limerick, but a worrying position for the rest of the championship then, because you're thinking very hard to see anyone laying a glove on them, so you really are looking for Clare to front up here on Sunday, and even what Ruairi was saying there, not necessarily win the game, but that they can deliver the performance, and even if they lose, it's in on the back of delivering a performance,
I don't see that happening though, Rory, to be fair. I mean, Thurles has been a very happy hunting ground for Clare recently. I mean, you think back to the championship so far, two very comprehensive wins against Cork and Tipperary. Yeah.
4 wins in a row in the championship in Thurles. Now, I'm sure Limerick have a similar record there at the moment as well, but they do love Thurles. This present Clare team do anyway. And I don't think that the venue is going to have any negative factor for Clare. It's just going to be unbelievable atmosphere, like sellout since couldn't believe the terrace tickets sold out in 11 minutes when they went online.
Yeah, unbelievable. It's just harking back to we haven't seen this probably, this sort of level of excitement, and it just looks like it's going to be a nice day on Sunday as well, and it reminds you of the battles in the 90s, to be honest, wouldn't it? It really is like a throwback feel to it, which is brilliant.
A clubmate of mine, Tom Sheehan, on Twitter had up after the Ulster football final. This Ulster football final has been the greatest advert for hurling. So let's hope that the Munster hurling final will be an even greater advert for hurling next Sunday.
Absolutely, yeah.
Absolutely. No, it'll be a great game. My best team win, and we'll see what Sunday brings. Moving swiftly along, Saturday night, Croke Park. We have the Leinster Senior Hurling Championship final. I'm actually going to be down in Kilkenny for the weekend, but Kilkenny entertaining Galway in probably their second home really in Croke Park, to be perfectly fair. But what are you thinking about this one? I know an awful lot has been made of the first game between these two in Pearse Stadium, Salt Hill, the infamous handshake at the end, but I'm getting the sense here in Galway that they're expecting a much more improved performance of Kilkenny in the Leinster Hurling final after the performance that they gave against Wexford. I suppose, Rory, what are the matchups that you're looking forward to here in this match?
Yeah, I suppose going back to the Wexford game, Kilkenny were really disappointing that day, and we spoke about how last week how they kind of broke down tactics-wise to kind of a route one long ball, which is something that we'd associated with Kilkenny back when they had like 6 forwards that could win their own ball, and Cody's line apparently was no ball into the forward line is a bad ball. But they have tried to, we saw through the league and even through aspects of last year's championship as well, how Kilkenny have tried to change their style to a more fluid working the ball through the lines and mixing it up again. But they kind of went back to, under pressure, I thought they went back to kind of a default position there against Wexford. And it's just, I suppose, from a Galway point of view, they just looked that bit more settled in the Leinster Championship this year. Like they should have beaten Wexford down. Like, so really you could say they could easily have won all 4 games, although they could have lost the game against Kilkenny as easily, even though they gave away a very soft goal, Galway, that day, but could have lost it as easily as winning it by a point. But so I just think that Galway have been progressing well. Like the full forward line of Whelan, Concannon, like there's major scoring in there. Conor Cooney has stepped it up this year a bit after a couple of quiet seasons with them. They just seem to have a real scoring threat up front, and that's one thing I would question about Kilkenny at the other side. Apart from Owen Cody and, who has a bit level of consistency, there's a real level of inconsistency with a lot of the Kilkenny forwards. Like one day Billy Ryan plays well, another day it's Keown, and they just they don't seem to get 2 or 3 good games in a row off some of these guys. And there's a bit of a, moving the deck chairs around every time Cody picks a forward line. There's like 3 or 4 of the same guys who were out the last year back in. Another like Walter Walsh, I suppose, it has improved again this year as well. He's having a good season. Real threat up front. I thought went missing for a good bit against Wexford though, when one of the reasons I suppose Kilkenny were lumping high ball forward was that the whole Walter would win it, but that wasn't really working out for them either that day. So you just wonder, are Kilkenny kind of going to go back to what they've been doing of late, working the ball through, worrying more about quality of ball inside, because again you're pumping high ball down to Grode McInerney and Dahi Burke, and they're gonna, it'll be the same as it was in Dolan Park a week or 2 ago. So from that point of view, like the danger here, I would say, is that Galway don't perform. They have a tendency to, go into games where there's expectations of them and just give a drab performance or a flat performance. I hope Henry Shefflin has kind of, spoken to them about that. It's something he would have observed from the other side over the years. So from that point of view, you are kind of, there's a level of, you can't really be sure. But if Galway perform as they seem to be improving, I would think Galway will win this match.
Yeah, James, bring in there.
They looked a more settled unit to me. Like the back line's playing quite well, and I think the forward line looks a bit more potent than Kilkenny at the minute as well. And like Cody's, he seems to be like he's chopping and changing quite a bit, and which isn't a good sign for them. And like obviously on Cody looks probably their best forward at the minute, but it's all well and good. But if you're just lamping ball over his head, he's not going to be in the game, And that like we said it there, Ruairi, is that when the pressure did come on them against Wexford, they did revert to type, and that's not just in the Wexford game either. That happened to them in the league game against Cork, where they started very well and in the semi-final, and they were working the ball, through the lines, and when a bit of pressure came on them in the second half, they did the exact same thing. They reverted to type, and they were just lamping high balls down, and the Cork half backline came back into the game. And the same with Wexford the other day. Like, we're expecting that, a Cody team are going to show up. They're going to be hurting after the last day. They're probably going to be hurting after what happened in Salt Hill as well. But you would expect it of Kilkenny to turn up all guns blazing against Wexford as well, because it was all on the line. Like they only really got through because the results went their way. In the Galway Dublin match, but they weren't to know that, and they were, I thought the second half they were very, very poor against Wexford. I think as well, that Hugh Lawler there in the back line is a big loss for them. He's out with a broken hand, so I mean. I don't know who's coming in there. Maybe Conor Delaney. I'm looking like, say, during the league, Blanchfield is very good there in the half back line. Hasn't really come into his own at all in the championship. And you're looking then even like Pádraig Walsh. When the game was on the line there against Wexford, I think it came on for 3 minutes. And he wasn't injured either. I heard. So you're wondering that, like, what was he carrying a knock? But I heard Tommy Walsh talking after that, saying that, he'd been talking to him in the afternoon, and there was no injury, so I think Cody seem a little bit unsettled to me. Galway looked a more settled team, and they're kind of building nicely and a little bit under the radar. If you were to ask me for my prediction on it, I would think Galway for me.
Yeah, I think the excitement here in Galway, it's kind of mixed. I think they're eagerly looking forward to seeing what Limerick and Clare will do on Sunday. The Saturday game, I think, is a real barometer for Galway. If they are genuine All-Ireland contenders here, they really have to produce a performance here in Croke Park, because you rewind the tape back, in the Leinster Hurling Final not too long ago, where they kind of dominated for at least 60 minutes, should have had a game out of sight, and then 2 quick goals for Kilkenny fundamentally changed the game and they lost. And I think an awful lot of Galway folk here are just really wanting to see a very consistent performance in 70 minutes. They saw kind of flashes of it, particularly against Kilkenny at home, and also the home performance against Dublin, which I was at. Second half wise, third quarter, they were very impressive. I suppose the likes of the Tom Monaghan's of this world really have to step up. Cathal Mannion as well. I think Cathal has the ability to win games on his own. He's a mercurial hurler. He's very highly regarded up in this side of the country in Galway. I think really it's going to be guys like that really going to have to drive this for Galway. Particularly, I think likes of Butler inside for Kilkenny has been sensational at cornerback. They won't be giving too much away for Kilkenny full back line. So I think it's really going to be up to the half forward line, maybe midfield, and maybe a Fintan Burke as well, Pádraig Mannion as well, really kind of lead by example here. But the only concern, and I think the concern I would have from Galway here, is distribution puck-out strategy here, particularly with Éanna Murphy. Some folk here being a little bit critical in terms of distribution-wise, being a little bit one-dimensional, particularly on likes of Conor Cooney and Joseph Cooney, particularly. A bit of a Kilkenny symptom, a little bit, gone very direct. That maybe a little bit of variation in play to kind of get likes of Fintan Burke really kind of running from deep, because he does that for St. Thomas's consistently in championship season and season out. So I think it's very intriguingly poised, just how both teams probably will tactically show on the day. I suppose we haven't even mentioned about TJ Reid here, guys. TJ Reid and Croke Park, pretty synonymous with immaculate performances, and I suppose could have a huge bearing on the game as well, Roy.
I suppose there's been kind of a lot of talk, is TJ Reid in decline, and I suppose there's been a mixed bag from him this year, but I suppose the likes of TJ Reid, they're synonymous with their performance on the big day. And if TJ is a match winner in the Leinster final Saturday, there'll be nobody talking on Monday about TJ, coming into decline, because that's when he has delivered in the past. But Kilkenny are going to need him. They're going to need Pádraig Walsh, presuming he'll be starting after the Wexford defeat. That he'd be a guy that you'd be handing the starting jersey back to immediately after that performance from the Kilkenny forward line. And also, as we mentioned there, Owen Cody, these guys are going to have to step up big time for them. Walter Walsh, because as we said, Galway are a settled team. They are scoring threats all over. And again, like the Butler, possibly Concannon matchup would be one, whoever gets the better of that one will have a huge bearing in the game as well inside. So and as we mentioned before the podcast started, it's just the starting time of this game is very unfair for Galway supporters, I think. A 2-hour journey home at 9 o'clock on a Saturday evening coming out of Dublin. Obviously no one can get a hotel room there, so
I think that's, I'd agree completely. I think it's ridiculous. So you're even looking there at the at the game before in the Joe McDonagh, the Kerry hurlers actually couldn't get a hotel, so they're forced to drive up and drive back down. So 7 o'clock throwing when you can't get accommodation, it's just like, if you want to bring, it's a marquee game. Obviously the Munster final is probably carrying a bit more, razzmatazz about it, but you want to bring kids up and you want to bring kids into the game, coming from Galway there, even coming from Kilkenny as well. I just think that's ludicrous time for the Leinster final. Yeah, I agree completely.
Yeah, probably tied in with TV schedules, but you'd say something if there was accommodation there for supporters.
That's it. Like like Dublin is, it's. You can't get a hotel in Dublin at the minute, and if you do want to get a hotel, you're paying through the nose for for not very good quality. So that's very unfair.
Yeah, and for an organisation that's meant to be built on the family and bringing family to games, I
agree. You realistically, if you're going up there with kids, say you're coming from Galway there, it's not doable. You're going in there 7 o'clock. You're not going to be getting back to all hours. So yeah, and then like the same thing for we'll say Kerry hurling supporters that are travelling up. you're going up for the Joe McDonagh, and you might stay on for the Leinster final, but a 7 o'clock throwing is probably not going to be doable to be travelling all the way back down to North Kerry or wherever. Like I just think, it's just not a great look. And plus as well, you're talking what, like, be half full as well, so that could put people off going. So you're not maximising the crowd that you get, so it's just not a good look all around for me.
But every cloud is a silver lining. It's going to be great for us Saturday evening at 7 o'clock to sit down and watch the Leinster final from a selfish point of view.
Well, that's true. Like, yeah, it's good for the armchair fan, I suppose. Like, that's not travelling, but it's disappointing.
Yeah, indeed. I suppose, guys, get your predictions. I think you're kind of hinting Galway wins here. Are you guys?
Yeah,
Galway.
Galway. I think Galway. I think it'd be a huge malfunction from Galway or a massive performance from Kilkenny, which they're capable of doing when you least expect it. As our famous line here is, write them off at your peril. But I think Galway could have a consistent performance based on what we've seen, that they're kind of progressing. And if Kilkenny produce what they did now, Wexford were outstanding as well, not taking nothing away from Wexford, but that performance won't beat Galway in the Leinster final. So they'll have to.
I'd agree, and it's still, for me, it's that when they come under pressure, their new game plan that they're trying to implement goes out the window, and they become very one-dimensional. And Galway aren't the team to be doing that against. So I would agree with Ruairi on that. I think it would take Galway malfunctioning for Kilkenny to win on the weekend. But you never know with Cody. I mean, this will be their, like, which is a mad stat as well. If I know now Leinster, at times wasn't the most competitive, but Cody's going for his 18th Leinster title, which is that's you talk about Dublin's dominance in the football, like, but that's unbelievable. Whether or not that's like obviously there were some years that it wasn't competitive at all, but that's an unbelievable stat, really.
And when you think in Clare, like, we haven't won a Munster for 24 years, like, it just puts it in perspective, like, how many Kilkenny are winning in terms of their province.
It's just and they're going for this is their third in a row. Is that if they win on they won the last two, haven't they?
They have.
Yeah.
They've been ultra consistent, even though we've said that this current team may not be hitting the heights of previous ones in the late noughties and 2010s. They're still there.
They did, yeah, but it's Cody, isn't it? I think he's probably driving them on to to probably eke out performances in them, and they're probably they weren't good last day, but he's probably getting more out of them than what they have on paper. So it's Cody team, you never know, but I would be surprised if Galway
like, when Kilkenny are wounded and like they produce these ferocious performances like we saw in 2019 against Limerick, of savage intensity, and that's the minimum they're going to have to bring to beat Galway, I think, at the weekend. But Shefflin, from the other point of view, then it's kind of, he knows exactly what Kilkenny are going to bring. He's been there, he's been on those teams, so it is it's a huge asset to Galway to have him there facing against Kilkenny. Just his knowledge of what Cody will be driving at Kilkenny is a factor as well.
Well, that's an interesting side point as well. The Cody Shefflin, handshake, we'll say, from the last day as well. It would be interesting. Like, I thought it was kind of funny the last day there. Anthony Nash went there in his interview after with Cody, and Cody shut him down fairly quickly. So it'd be interesting to see. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, it'll be interesting here. I think the Galway camp, I've said in previous podcast episodes here, that the Galway camp has been pretty tight-knit. There hasn't been much in terms of leaks from the camp, in terms of who's starting, stuff like that. I'd probably give the hesitant bet to Galway, but I think Galway's composure is going to be tested here, particularly down the stretch. I don't see Kilkenny going away here. I think for Galway here, it'll be very interesting. I'll be very interested to see how they're composed, because Kilkenny are going to have their purple patch probably in the second half, third quarter. How they're going to react to that, because in previous years, when that has happened, they've really panicked. So I think from a Galway perspective, with Shefflin on the line, it'd be pretty interesting. I'll just give it a hesitant bet to Galway, but would not be at all surprised if Kilkenny won another Bob O'Keefe. I suppose the prelude to that Leinster Senior Hurling Championship final is the Joe McDonagh Cup Final. And I know we've mentioned it here, Ruairi, last week, in terms of the excitement of the round robin, how Kerry went to Antrim, got a great win, and then Carlow going to Tullamore and doing an absolute job on Offaly, and this weekend we have Antrim and Kerry playing again. And we talked at length last week in terms of Kerry's situation, but any optimism here for the Kingdom, Ruairi, to beat an Antrim team who'd probably bringing back the likes of Gunning and a few others back into the starting lineup? Do you see Kerry kind of finally getting over the Joe McDonagh Cup Final kind of mountain here?
First of all, a tremendous achievement for Kerry to get there. When they lost to Down early in the Joe McDonagh round robin, a home game against Down, you'd have thought, they're going to be, in trouble here. But they've been phenomenal, and that win, the last day up in Antrim, albeit Antrim may have one or two guys they're looking after or whatever, but for then Kerry to go up there having to win up in Antrim, as we saw, Clare struggled there in the league last year, came away with a defeat, and they shoved it up to every team they played up there in home games above in Antrim in Corrigan Park, and just to get that win and kind of upset everything, because nobody talked about Kerry to start this coming out of Joe McDonagh. All the talk was about Offaly, the momentum that from coming up from Christy Ring, and being in Division 1 in the league as well. But fair play to Kerry, and for Kerry as well, Boyle has really stepped up this year as well, taking a bit of the pressure off Shane Conway. He's a real threat up front, and just having that dual threat, huge scoring power from the two of them, has for a lot of defences in the Joe McDonagh, they have caused havoc. Saying that, I just think Antrim are maybe that bit further down the line than Kerry, like the likes of Keelan Malloy and Clark, McManus, Conor McCann. They just have I think they just have that extra two or three kind of players that have been around the block, that have been in these huge games. So yeah, I'm going to give the nod to Antrim, but look, with the way Kerry have been going, they're right at this level. You don't know, but just Antrim have probably been in Croke Park in these bigger games that bit more often as well. When they did meet in the Joe McDonagh final a couple of years ago, Antrim had that small bit to spare in them as well. I know Kerry came back at them late in the game, but I just thought Antrim were that bit better than them at the time. And so far, they seem to have been maybe that bit ahead of them. But I know in a final, anything can happen. As James alluded to earlier, a red card or something like that could turn this game in its head. So Kerry are not without a good shout in this. And in a way, they're kind of going in there with a free shot. Antrim are the ones that have been talked about since the start. A lot of expectation on them, and Kerry are coming up there under the radar, and can throw everything at Antrim and see where it takes them.
They're coming in with plenty of momentum, all right. And I'd like to see Kerry winning, but I just think Antrim, Antrim last week, they knew they were already through, and I think really they had their eyes firmly fixed on this weekend. So I don't think I'd read too much into what happened last weekend, and I just think, for me, Antrim have more quality than Kerry. I'd be siding. I'd love to see Kerry winning it, but I think Antrim be too strong.
I'm kind of going with you there in terms of the form guides. Antrim, apart from the final round, were the dominant side. They were putting up huge scores: 7-29 against Meath. They were 2-22 against Carlow, 6-22 against Down. So, they've been scoring very heavy, and you say, likes of McNaughton, McManus, Keane Malloy has been in absolute superb form this year for Antrim, and even in the league. I know they may have gotten relegated, but I think, to be fair to Antrim, they did show an awful lot of good points on that performance. I'm thinking in terms of the Waterford performance in Corrigan Park, where they should have really gotten something out of that game. So they've kind of shown the calibre that they have there. But yeah, I would love to see Kerry win, but they've been knocking on the door here for many a year, and I think what a part of me would like to see them win, just to see how farcical the whole fixture scheduling will turn out. Because if Kerry were to win, they would have to play a playoff game against Tipperary to then kind of get into the Munster Senior Hurling Championship, where Antrim would be straight through to the Leinster Hurling Championship.
I think that's just that kind of annoys me a little bit, to be honest with you. It's ludicrous. I don't know. Yeah, I'm kind of biting my tongue in that one now, but that infuriates me really, and it's I suppose it is what it is. What can you do? But I actually think it was actually Cork, was it, that one of the major blockers and and that protectionism there in Munster. But yeah, I mean, you can make the argument that, all right, like Munster is obviously a lot more competitive than Leinster, but if you want to bring these teams on, I don't see how if Kerry were to win, going straight into the Munster Championship, I can't see how that's a disadvantage to them. To bring them on leaps and bounds, playing at that level. But,
and it's something we said last week as well, James, that were it to happen, let's say that they were to win against Antrim, and let's say they were parachuting into Munster Championship, that I don't think any of the other 5 counties would have a problem with playing all the Kerry games in Kerry. Just, do you know what I mean?
No, I wouldn't think so.
You're promoting it as well, maybe in Killarney, in an area that's hurling is beginning to grow with Crokes, and in Tralee, Parnells. Bring the big teams down there, and
if they're serious about promoting the game, then and like particularly in a county it's particularly in a county like Kerry, where they are fighting the losing battle with their football counterparts, and I just think it'd be huge for them. You said yourself there, like bringing down, you could have, and actually, like, that's the other thing as well, is if Kerry. If Kerry could be looking at playing Cork in a qualifier if they win on Saturday as well. So that would be down in Tralee. Yeah,
pretty novel. And I think for Kerry as well, it's an important game. I think just on the back of the news that there may be potentially professional soccer in Kerry in the not too distant future. So I think that's another kind of real kind of, from the FAA perspective, they're looking to get down to the southwest.
Yeah.
And again, that could really attract some hurling stars to soccer as well, which would be unfortunate. I'm hoping Kerry win, but I think they're going to need a few goals here. I think 3 or 4 goals to beat Antrim. I think just on the form, I think the scoring power here, even though likes of Conway is there in Kerry, I think they just will be falling a little bit short of the Kingdom. I think Antrim will win, and Laois will be heading into Joe McDonagh next season.
They do have there are the strongholds in Kerry there in North Kerry, they are fanatical about their hurling. I can remember I was passing through Abbey Dorney and stuff, and there was they weren't even the football final was on or whatever a few years back now, and Kerry were in it, and they weren't even watching that. They are fanatical about their hurling. So it'd be great for them if they could win and build on that.
And another factor of late is that hurling is growing in Tralee, where there are big populations in Killarney, Crokes and St. Pat's, so that just having Kerry in a Munster Championship will further bring it along. Maybe it's, they've reached a standard now where they're probably ranked, even if you're being unkind to them, saying 11th or 12th is where they're at, so they're nearly 11th or 12th, and surely they're worth to go in the Munster Championship.
I can't see any downside to it, really, and you have a nice even bunch then for you have the 6 teams then, which numbers wise makes it
which is Leinster then as well.
Yeah, it does. So I mean, I'd be all for it, but unfortunately that's not the case at the minute.
No, I think it's an intriguing matchup, and best luck to both teams. Before we leave here, guys, the All-Ireland Minor Series, the qualification series, has kicked off in the last few weekends. Galway are already through. Looking forward to an All-Ireland semi-final. And now we're faced with Laois and Clare in a winner-take-all battle in Cusack Park, Ennis. Ruairi, I suppose from your perspective, what are the thoughts of people in Clare about that fixture? Given Laois's prominence in the Minor Hurling Championship this year, they have shown very well.
Yeah, Laois are by no means going to be a pushover. Even, let's say, they performed a lot better against Galway than Clare did. I suppose there was massive, disappointment in Clare with the performance, considering the Munster final and the standard of hurling Clare had produced it both against, actually in the 3 games, Waterford, Cork, and then in the final against Tipperary, that they expected, a better performance against Galway. But as I've pointed out before, one thing I've learned with young at this age is it's hard to get consistency. At that age, consistency isn't quite there yet. You don't really know what you're going to get from players game to game. And I suppose one of the major factors with Clare was their half-forward line were so dominant in Munster. Like just looking here, Organ, O'Neill and Collins, they scored 8 points from play against Cork, 11 points from play against Tip, and they only got 3 points as a total against Galway from play. So like that was one of the major reasons, I suppose, why they didn't perform as well. They've been kind of the engine of the team. As we saw, O'Neill against Tipperary, 5 points from play himself as centre forward, and also his work rate driving back through the pitch and winning possession and linking play. So that was that was probably an area that if those 3 lads can get back to the level they were in Munster, Clare being with a great shout. For Laois then, Ger Quinlan scored 1-5 from play against Galway full forward. So I know Clare's probably one of their top players, Finan Tracy from Éireoga, is full back and captain as well at the side. So he'll be directly marking him. So Clare be hopeful that he can limit the damage there, because as we saw against Offaly, like Laois, for all their kind of heart and work rate, and they were still reliant on Quinlan and 1 or 2 other guys for the scoring. And that's fine in a team where the other players are doing the work, and winning the ball for you can work really well. Just you don't need 6 scorers if 2 of them are doing all the damage. But the danger is today one of them is held. And yeah, I think as well, like as we know, even at underage level, Ennis is a tough place to come. Clare just kind of probably have they played both their Munster games there. Actually, I think they played Kerry and Sixmilebridge, but they played Waterford and Ennis, so they're kind of familiar with it. And it is last chance for saloon for them. So I see it like with the way Laois have played this year, there's nothing going to be easy. Nobody has steamrolled them in any game. They beat Wexford, they beat Kilkenny, they ran Offaly very close in both games they played them in, and ran Galway to 3 points last week. A Galway team, much talked about team, with Aaron Ireland doing massive damage up front for Galway. He scored 5 points from play the last day and 6 points from play against Clare, so 11 points from play in 2 games. Like he is the next big talent coming through, Evan's brother. So the fact Laois could go toe to toe with Galway is going to give them great heart, and they'll think that they can come down to Ennis and get a result. I just think that Clare I'd be hopeful anyway, they'll rebound back to the Munster Championship form they had showed, and just getting to the Ireland semi-final will be a big boost for them. Just getting up, playing against Leinster teams, getting another few weeks training, because it is all about development at this age, and the more games you play against quality teams, the better it's going to be in the long run.
Exactly. James, bring you in there as well.
Just on Ireland, actually, the people in Galway are rating him much. They're rating him higher than the brother likes, and so there's really high prospects on him. But I think Rory's point on there was a bad beating that Clare took against Galway, and at underage you are prone to being a bit inconsistent. But I do think the venue is going to make a big difference. I think Clare are difficult to beat down there, and as good as all as Laois have been this year, I think that would swing it for me. I'm going to lean on the side of Clare to come out of that one, I think.
Yeah, I think I'll go with you there, guys. I think that there's better spread of scores with Clare. I think it's a clean slate for Clare. I think just given how that Munster Minor Hurling final went, I think there was definitely a hangover. There was definitely disappointment. And the fact that Galway brought this game to St Mary's GAA grounds in Athenry as well, an awful lot of the starting lineup for Galway really played their games in Athenry, so familiarity there, getting them on the front foot. As you said, Aaron Ireland was absolutely superb. If we go to Galway, I think defensively they still have 1 or 2 issues. I think Ger Quinlan definitely exposed an awful lot of weakness there, particularly in that full back line. So much so that centre half back for Galway did have to come in and steady the ship down. And I think the last 5 minutes was incessant pressure off Laois. And another day could have gotten a goal right at the end. So I think from that perspective, Clare have been duly warned. But I think Clare, they know what's at stake here, get into an All-Ireland semi-final. And I think they will do it. I think the likes of Whelan, Stretch, O'Neill, Collins, Scanlon, there's Organ as well. I think there's a good spread of scores there. And it'd be a shame, I think, Ruairi, from a Clare perspective, to end the season if they could, if they do lose at home. But I don't see that happening. I think Laois are very over dependent on Quinlan and Deegan. They'll work very hard in the middle third. But I think Clare should have too much.
The other factor as well is that there's a real feel-good factor around Clare in general at the minute with what's going on at senior level, and that can drive the younger teams on as well. So I think I think that will come into play as well, where they're just drive them on a bit momentum wise. Everything's going on this weekend, and you've seen it before. We saw that last year with Cork with the minors and the 20s with seniors. That seemed to drive them on a bit. So I can't see anything but a clear win, to be honest. Yeah.
I imagine, Ruairi, there'll be a big crowd at Cusack Park to support the young lads of Clare here. It's like season-defining fixture for them, given the early promise of a Munster Minor Hurling Championship. I think they're due a big crowd at Cusack Park on Saturday as well.
Yeah, and we another thing we mentioned before the podcast is I think the GA have missed a trick here because Clare are playing Meath at home in the football qualifiers, and I can't for the life of me figure out why these games aren't doubled up back to back. Just for people that don't know, Clare and Laois is on at 1 o'clock, and our favourite TV station, TG Cahir, are streaming it on the web. So that's available for anyone who likes to tune into it. But also, like, the Clare Meath game isn't on until 5. I think it's 6 o'clock in the evening. Yeah, 6 o'clock in the evening. So if you went into the Clare game, you've a gap of 4.5 hours. Like, so they obviously want people to leave and pay again to go back in. I don't know what the story is, why it's broken up like that, because
madness.
Yeah, it is madness.
Like what you want to maximize your crowd. So I mean, any chance that anyone that goes in for the hurling, they might stay on for the football, and vice versa. Anyone coming in for the football might slip in early for the hurling. I can't see the logic in it.
And there's no danger of the hurling going to extra time, because if it's a draw, Laois will go through and score difference. So
they will.
This is a huge, like, Laois are probably thinking this is our biggest chance to get to an Ireland semi-final.
Yeah.
Like, this won't come around, for Laois very often. The manager Qualter, who's over them, I've come across him, a good few times. He's doing tremendous work at Laois underage, and I'm just delighted that these guys, sometimes with counties that are starved of success, are kind of getting a year where they're rewarded for all their hard work. Because we can play them under 14 and play them again this year, and just kind of the development even from under 14. And if you remember, there's 2 years of COVID in there as well. So like the work these guys have put in with these underage squads, like often kind of a thankless job in many situations, especially if you're in a county with a team that kind of annually are one of the first teams out, but still putting in as much work. So I'm just kind of delighted for these guys that they're kind of getting their day in the sun as such. And if they get to an Ireland semi-final, like, these guys, they're going to be talked about as heroes.
Absolutely. What would you actually do if you were actually planning to go to both games? Like, you're not going to hang around for the few hours, like, so you're going to leave, yeah, and then I presume your ticket's not going to be validated to let you back in, so you have to buy another ticket.
It's an interesting one. Like, I wonder what is the scenario there.
I don't know. Yeah.
Let's say the likes of Clare FM, who are probably trying to do a commentary today, like, just leave all their equipment there, leave the stadium, come back a few hours later. Hope it's all still intact.
Realistically, nobody's going to hang around for 3 hours or whatever in the stadium. You're going to leave. You're going to get food or whatever in you, and it's mad. Yeah.
And just the cost involved as well. If you were like one of the most ardent of Clare supporters and saying I'm going to support both teams and then the Munster final the next day, you're looking at a cost of €10 for the minor, 25 for Clare and Meath, which I think is extortionate for a qualifier game, and then €40 for the Munster final. Then, so like, just the expense involved. Like, you're kind of hitting the supporter again, the loyal supporter. But look, again, I suppose from a Clare point of view, just kind of happy we're in all these games, and especially as things are coming to the business end.
You can think about it from the Laois people coming down there as well. There's a lot of football up there as well, and they might want to stay on. But you're talking there.
Of course, even if you weren't, in just the fact that there's an All Ireland Championship knockout football game on, you'd stay and two divisions.
Yeah, you might. But like 6 o'clock then makes it awkward if you're traveling back up to Laois, So I don't know.
Yeah, you'd wonder what logistics goes into this, but overall, anyway, we've a huge weekend ahead of us to look forward to.
Massive, yeah.
Massive weekend, guys. Thanks, Ruairi. Thanks, James, for the contributions tonight. I suppose next week we'll sit back and review all the provincial action, Joe McDonagh Cup, and also the minors. Until then, guys, enjoy the games, and we'll talk next week.
Take care, Mark. Thank you.
Cheers, Mark.
Thank you for listening to this podcast episode. If you liked what you heard in this podcast, why not subscribe to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast on either Amazon, Spotify, YouTube or Twitter platforms. You can also follow me at Hawkeye Sidekick on Facebook and Twitter for the latest sporting opinions, articles and reports.